Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to another Burlingame. It's a small-town podcast sponsored by the Burlingame Historical Society. This is Mark Lucchese, also known as Mark at the Mic, and it's my pleasure to have as my guest today, longtime Burlingame resident, former teacher and coach at Burlingame High, and for the last 12 years, he has been coaching football at Sacred Heart Prep in Atherton. Please welcome to the show, Coach Ed Larios. Coach Ed Larios, thanks for being on the show today.
Hey, looking forward to it, and I'm ready for your questions.
I wish everybody could see Coach Larios right now. You look like a coach, man. You got the Nike shirt on, the hat on, the Adidas hat, looking good with the headphones. You look like you're calling plays down, man. So,
hey, hope these work.
Before we roll into this interview, Ed, I think I should just tell everybody, you're a two-time Hall of Famer. Is that correct?
I think four-time.
Oh, four-time. Okay, so I'm going to go with the two that I know. That would be San Francisco State Hall of Fame in 1992 and the Burlingame High School Athletic Hall of Fame in 2016. What are the other two? I'm
in the Daly City Hall of Fame and the Pacifica Hall of Fame.
Wow.
And the San Francisco State Gridiron Hall of Fame.
So is that like five then or something?
Something like that. I pay dues for every one of them.
So you mentioned Daly City. So you're in good company up there with probably John Madden?
John Madden is 10 years older than me, but I was aware of John. I knew John because they were the bigger boys on the playground.
Yeah.
And we all went to the same church, OLPH.
And
so
crazy.
Everybody knew everybody, and everybody went to Marchbanks Park, and there was the big guys and the small guys.
Yeah. And you were one of the big guys.
I was one of the small guys.
No, you developed into one of the big guys.
Well, John Madden and John Robinson were the big guys.
Yeah. So just quickly, John Madden went to Jeff, and his best friend, John Robinson, went to Sarah.
Right.
Yeah.
But they both lived by each other.
Great
And they
stuff.
were great friends. They all went to OLPH together.
Wow.
And John Madden went to Reardon and then left after his freshman year and came to Jeff.
Went to Jeff.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't think a lot of people know that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we are now going to spin backwards a little bit and go to high school.
Okay.
And I did a little research. In that research, you didn't start a game until your senior year at Jefferson. Is that correct?
In football, yeah. I did start the last game of my junior year, which was the annual South City Jefferson night before Thanksgiving football game, similar to the Little Big Game.
Right, that we used to have on Thanksgiving Day here at
and we did
San
it on
Mateo.
Thanksgiving Eve.
Right.
And I got to play in that. I loved that. I used to go to that game when it was at Jeff, then it was at South City. And I started when I was 5 years old going to those games.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't wait to be in it, just to be there. And when the coach McGrath and Coach Larios, who were the football coach, said, "You're starting Friday night," I couldn't believe it. It was like a dream come true.
That was your last game of your junior year, and then you went on to start all of the games your senior year. Okay, I got a couple of questions about that, but you mentioned Joe McGrath, and for our listeners out there, folks should know that Joe McGrath was a longtime resident here in Burlingame as well. And he had 3 children, 2 daughters, and his son Dan McGrath and myself went to St. Catherine's and Sarah together.
Correct.
And where did Joe live? I always want to think
he lived on Corbett.
Thank you, Corbett.
Yeah.
That's right.
Right around the corner from the school.
Yeah. How about a Joe McGrath story?
Well, Joe McGrath, a couple of things about him and how we got together. When I was a freshman, I wasn't 100 pounds yet, and I wasn't 5 feet yet. And they didn't have freshman football. They dropped it and had JVs instead.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I went out for lightweight basketball and didn't make it. So then I got an F in PE, and my counselor was the track coach. And he said, "Listen, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get you into my PE class, and I want you to go out for wrestling." And Joe McGrath was the wrestling coach. So I wrestled 103s my freshman year, and I worked hard. I was a JV wrestler. I worked hard. Coach McGrath, liked how hard I worked for a little guy, with that little guy complex, I could beat everybody up. And then Bob Watt, who later became the principal at Oceana, who hired me at Oceana, I went out for track, and I was running, the 400 and 100 and stuff like that. And the next year, I went out for frost soft football. And I wanted to be a running back. And I wanted to have number 24, which was Lenny Moore's number.
Oh, my gosh, from the Baltimore Colts.
Right. And so when I was a little kid, my mom bought me a one of those Hutch uniforms.
Yes.
And I painted Baltimore Colt horseshoe on my white helmet. I walk down the street in my football stuff, go down to Frankfurt Park in Daly City, and try to play tackle football with the older guys.
Yeah.
And the thing was, I wasn't very big. And so but I loved football. Football was in my blood. In fact, guys like Madden and Robinson and the Kennedy brothers and Pete Garcia, I would see them at church, and it was like watching royalty. These guys were the ultimate football players.
Yeah.
And so McGrath, my sophomore year, I wanted to be a running back. And I was in some drill, and the coach said, I want you to be a lineman. I wasn't even 110 pounds.
Right.
So he put me in the game against Westmore, the only game I started, and they ran a trap play, and I went, oh, nobody's blocking me. I went right out. All of a sudden, the guy just, boom, I was like 15 feet away from the play after he blocked me. And that was the last game that I actually played in. So my junior year, I didn't go out for football in the spring. I was going to say, I'm just going to run track.
Really?
And so I was going to go out for cross country. So in the summer, guys in my neighborhood, they're playing football. So I said, I love football. I'm going to go out and play football. So I went to summer, and Joe McGrath had a guy from Burlingame. I forgot who he was, and he ran all our stuff during the summer. So then I came out for football my junior year, and I got in the line with the running backs because I wanted to be a running back. And one of the coaches, Steve Mazzara, who played football at Oregon with Norm Van Brocklin, he counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Ed, you're 7. Go with the receivers. Not because I could catch or anything, just to even the numbers.
That's the way it worked out.
And so that's how I became a receiver. So during scrimmages, I'd always make good catches and everything else, but the guys in front of me were really good. They were better than me.
Right.
They were bigger. Mm-hmm. So my senior year, Coach McGrath, he said, you're playing, you're going to be the starting receiver, you're going to be starting DB, and we're going to throw the ball to you 90% of the time.
And
they did. And I was lucky that Coach McGrath, who happened to be my CCD teacher at OLPH and my wrestling coach,
wow,
and now my football coach, he saw a lot in me, as did this other coach, Bob Lulhadi, who was Skyline College coach in track and field. And he just kept telling me that, you can do this. I like the way you work, and finally, and what happened was there was the Daly City Post was a paper, a derivative of the Times. Mm-hmm. And they wanted to take a picture of somebody. And there was my brother-in-law, Leo Gatelli, was a starter on the varsity for 2 years before that. And I figured they're going to get Leo or they're going to get Donnie Fitzcarr or somebody else. And Coach goes, Ed, Ron Bates, I'll never forget, he wants to take your picture in a pose. And he took my picture in a pose and put it in the paper.
What a thrill.
And I looked in the paper. Wednesday morning, Post came. And it just motivated me.
Absolutely.
But the real thing about it was the first 2 games of my senior year, I didn't play because I sprained my ankle during double days. Couldn't play. Then I got to play, and we were playing in Lake Tahoe. And I finally scored a touchdown in a game against South Tahoe. And I made the opening kickoff tackle, so I figured, well, if I make the opening kickoff tackle in our next game, I'll have another good game.
Right.
So we play South City at night. I make a tackle, but the running back steps on my hand and breaks my hand.
Oh, my gosh. Wow.
So anyway, I break my hand. I finish the game. I get catch, touchdown, some passes. So I go to the doctor, and the doctor says, you got to come back so I can put the cast on Friday. But I had a game on Friday. He said, well, you got to go Friday. So I missed that game on Friday against one of the weaker teams where I probably would have caught passes. Yeah. So anyway, I come back and I say, Coach, I'm through. And he goes, what do you mean? He said, I got a cast and I got a broken hand. And Coach Lulhadi said, well, we'll just take care of it. Go in the shower, put your hand under the shower until the cast softens up. We'll take it off. And then for every game, we'll tape it and we'll give you 2 aspirin.
Seriously.
That's
crazy.
You couldn't do that now.
No.
But anyway, so as time went on, I led the league in receiving. And I had, there's a picture of me in the yearbook with my hand all taped up, making a catch.
Great.
So I wound up having a really good year. I set the league record for receptions. And at that time, it was like 20.
Yeah.
They do that in a game now.
Right. There was
but
more
we
running.
were throwing the
It's all
ball,
running,
and
right.
it just was a good thing.
So let me ask you then, were you playing wide receiver or tight end?
I was playing at Jeff. We had a T formation, so we had tight end, and sometimes you'd be split.
Okay.
So it was funny because anytime McGrath wanted to throw the ball to me, he split me.
Yeah. And that way it was a tip off to those
with the
guys.
other team.
He's going to throw the ball to Ed.
So anyway, I like I said, led the league in receiving.
Yeah.
Played defense, got a couple interceptions, and made all league, all county.
So after Jeff, then you got this opportunity to go to San Francisco State.
Right.
Is that how that worked out?
Well, what worked out was Oregon. Johnny Robinson, who was a friend of McGrath, said, if you come up here, there might be a chance for you to play up here and everything else, but no scholarship. And then San Jose State offered me a scholarship. But then I said, and then here's the thing. The coach from CSM called me, Dick Vermeil.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
He called me. He was a receiver coach.
Vermeil was coaching at CSM at that time. That's right.
And he said, Ed, you come here and we're throwing the ball. And so San Jose State, I didn't want to leave my house. I didn't want to leave home. I was homesick, and I could help out financially at my house and everything else if I worked. So Bob Luhadi, who was my football coach as well as McGrath, and this guy Dick Boyd both played at State for Joe Verducci.
Okay. That was your coach? That would be your coach?
No, because Joe Verducci left and became athletic director and mayor of Daly City, and then a supervisor of San Mateo County.
Okay.
So those guys said, hey, Ed, you can go to State and play. You can be there, and it's a 4-year school and everything else. And I had good grades. I mean, I was a good student, but I had no motivation to go to college. I mean, if I didn't play football, I'd probably be a rich contractor right now instead of a poor teacher. But the thing is, I went to State, and they had a good group of athletes that came in. And at that time, State, it's a non-scholarship school, but to get you a job, and they get you pre-reg, so you don't have to wait in line to register and everything else. And we played good football. We played, San Jose State, San Diego State, UOP. We played a lot of schools. And we had a lot of guys.
Very decent.
We had a lot of guys that could have played D1 but didn't want to leave, guys from SI. And so I played for Coach Rowan.
Vic Rowan?
Vic Rowan, who is famous for developing coaches. Mike Holmgren, Dirk Cotter, and Andy Reid.
Yeah, I thought Reid had coached.
And those guys all were assistant coaches for Vic Rowan at State, and then that was their jumping point.
Yeah.
And so, and I learned how to coach football as well as play football.
Yeah.
Some guys can be great football players, but don't know how to translate it into coaching. Because at State, I was a PE major, history minor. And in PE, they taught you how to teach all kinds of sports and how to be a teacher of all kinds of sports, from gymnastics to soccer to tumbling, so that when we went out and got a job, we could coach anything because we knew how to coach.
Were you starting to get the itch then to coach and teach?
I didn't, because I still wanted to play.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't a very good student in college. I took all the easiest courses I could take the first 2 years to stay eligible. Then I got serious, because then I saw guys that I played with getting jobs teaching. They had graduated. They were older than me, and they had graduated and were working at Hillsdale, Burlingame, Terry Chrisman at Burlingame, people like that. So I said, I got to get my act together. So I settled down, did all my, got my schedule set up so that I could graduate on time and everything else. And at the same time, I got bigger. When I got to State, I was 30 pounds heavier than I was a year ago.
What was the weight?
My weight was, I was 165 pounds to 170 at Jeff, and I was 200 to 205 my freshman year at State.
Yeah, so you did get.
And I was about 3 inches taller.
Yeah.
But during that time at Jeff, I quit playing basketball. Wrestling, because I broke my hand in the first wrestling practice my junior year. So I went out for basketball, and I made the basketball team, made all league. In basketball, 30s. I was small enough to be a 30s player,
That's crazy.
So I played. I made all, and I played center.
Yeah.
At about 5'10", and playing against guys 6'3" and 6'4". Yeah. So we won the championship. I had a coach, Mick Kelly, great guy.
Yeah.
We wound up winning the championship, and so when I went to State, there was I'm going, I'm just a guy from Jefferson. I didn't know a soul. There's guys from Reardon that were all NorCal, all this, all that, guys that were, I go, that guy's, he's better than me. That guy's, but it wound up that I somehow wound up playing a lot, making a lot of catches, scoring some touchdowns.
Well, you landed in the Hall of Fame.
Well, yeah, because as a junior and senior, I had great years. I set the career receiving record for the college by the end of my senior year, and I set the Camellia Bowl record against San Diego State.
No kidding.
With 9 receptions, even though we lost.
Yeah.
And then from there, I played in Shrine North-South Shrine game.
Jeez.
And I
played in the North-South
Shrine game. Yeah. So I was lucky. I had a good year. We had a good season. Bob Toledo was our quarterback. He went later on UCLA head coach.
Yes.
He threw 55 touchdown passes that year, and at that time it was unheard of.
Yeah.
And so I caught a couple of them.
Yeah. You must have. Okay, so now you're at State, you're finishing up San Francisco State, and the Atlanta Falcons come around. How did that happen?
Here's what happened. I didn't get drafted. I was supposed to get drafted. Everybody said, you were going to draft you. We're going to draft you. You have an agent. So I was saying, I'm going to get drafted. But I didn't because I was playing tight end at college at 210.
Yep.
And in the NFL, you got to be a tight end at 230, 240. So, and they didn't know if I was fast enough to be a wide receiver. So 4 teams talked to me after the draft, which turned out to be better for me because I wound up getting more money than the guys who were drafted last by Atlanta.
No kidding.
Because I could say the New York Giants, Atlanta Falcons, Cleveland Browns, and New Orleans Saints all wanted me to sign with them as a free agent.
Right. You were a free agent.
So I was free.
At that time.
I could do whatever I wanted as far as that. So I wound up signing a big bonus of $2,000. But you got to figure, I was working for the rec department, not making $3 an hour.
Right.
So $2,000
was
man.
Big bucks.
That was
big bucks.
I won it.
Yeah. So you were with Atlanta for 1 year?
I was with Atlanta for 1 year. I made it through all the preseason games, and I was going to be on the active roster. But Atlanta had 2 miserable years, and the coach was in danger of getting fired. So he wanted to make sure that the last roster cuts of other teams, he wanted to make sure that he got good ones. Well, he got this kid, Paul Flatley, who was an all-pro receiver, and a kid named Bob Long, who played for the Green Bay Packers during the 2 Super Bowls. Okay. So that meant that I wasn't going to make the roster, but they asked me to be on the taxi squad.
Who was the coach at that time?
Norb Hecker. He was a defensive coach at Stanford, then at the 49ers. Mm-hmm. He was the head coach. Good guy, nice guy. All the coaches were ex-Green Bay Packer guys. They all played for Vince Lombardi.
Wow.
And so we played the 49ers in our second or third game, and John Brody just went crazy, got like 14 for 14. We lost. Hecker was fired. Bring in Norm Van Brocklin.
Right.
And so Norm Van Brocklin's the head coach, and he's a massive guy. I mean, he's a big man. He beat up his tackles in Philadelphia.
And he had a great reputation.
Yeah, and he's tough, but he's nasty, mean. I mean, he's...
Yeah.
So anyway, and every once in a while, we had a farm team, the Alabama Hawks. So whenever they needed somebody, they would say, okay, give me your taxi squad lineman, give me your taxi squad DB, give me your taxi squad receiver, give me your taxi squad punt returner. So a couple of times, they'd fly me down to Huntsville, Alabama, to play in their game, and then fly me back so I could be wherever the game we were playing was.
Were you still playing receiver, or had they moved you to defense? You stayed receiver the whole time?
Receiver the whole time, and kickoff and punts.
Yeah.
And I did that for Atlanta as well during the 5 preseason games.
Wow.
So I got to play in 5 NFL games. Oh. We played the first game, we played the Redskins.
Yeah.
We played the New York Giants. We played the New York Jets. We played New Orleans, and then we finished up with Miami.
Jeez.
So I played in all those games. I got to go on got my uniform, got all that. But during the season, when you're on tax squad, you're the other team's guy.
Practice against.
Yeah, that's the guy you can beat up.
That's the guy. Okay, so what happened after the conclusion of your first season?
Okay, so anyway, I get married. I have a wonderful wife, Ellen, who was my girlfriend and fiance my senior year. We get married
at Jeff or at San Francisco State.
Just met her. She went to Westmore. She was a cheerleader.
Yeah.
I just met her at a party. We used to have. Remember when people had parties?
Yeah, I do, Ed.
I met her at a party, and one thing led to another. But so that year, I wanted to finish up I wanted to graduate and get my credential going, because I didn't. If you're on a taxi squad of an NFL team that's the less and worst team, chances are that's not your future.
Right.
Okay. So then they have mini camp in April of the year 69, because I got married in 69.
Okay.
So they had a mini camp, and I was doing something, and I was listening to Van Brockland. He was talking, and I said, "Hey, Coach, what do you think was going on here?" And he said, "Well, he's this, and this," and he's kind of a mean guy. I said, "Well, I got to take my master's, test." I have a class and I got to go. And he says, "Well, if you go and you miss minicamp, you're through." I said, "Well, it's just minicamp." And he said, "Yeah, well, you're through. We want people that are 100% committed." I said, "I'm 100% committed, but I want to finish my master's,
right?
And I'll get my credential, and I want to, have a job in case I don't make the team,
right?
Because at that time I was making $15,000 if I made the team." But if you're on a taxi squad, you got half of that. So I made $7,500,
right.
Which still more than the $3 I was making at the rec department. Okay, I was making big money. So when I got married, we had a honeymoon in Hawaii. We went to the islands. We went, and I ran out of money, and I had to call my wife's mother if she could wire some money. And then I found out that I had it wasn't called Visa then; it was called a Bank Americard. I had one. And they said, you can go to the bank and get money from your credit card. Uh-huh. Oh, wow. Because half the time we were eating salami and French bread because I had no money. So once we did that, I said, geez, we're going out. We're split, the whole thing. So just a side note from that, they wound up making, Bank Americard called me up later on, and we made a commercial advertisement with me, my wife, my daughter, who was 3, and Steven, who was like an infant, on this thing. They took pictures and they put them on in banks all across the country.
That is crazy.
And somebody calls me up and says, "Ed, I saw your picture at the bank," and it said, "I was in Hawaii on my honeymoon and ran out of money," right? So who do you think would be that person? A football coach, and they put football coach on the bottom.
Wow. So
it was that was that. But I said, I left, and I said, I'm going to school. And he said, well, you just, might as well not come back. And I said, well, that's fine with me, because I really wasn't motivated to be there at that time anyway.
So that was it.
And so I just concentrated on my credential and everything else, got that all taken care of, and got my teaching job at Jeff in the fall of 69.
Did you finish up at San Francisco State with your master's and all of that?
I finished all that. I finished my credential first, then my master's.
Okay. Wow. Okay, so now you're out and you're going to go seek a teaching job and a coaching position, right?
Correct.
Where did that start?
It started right now when Joe McGrath and Mike Orlich, who was department chair, said, "You're not playing football anymore. We have a job for you."
Wow, that was
so. I was a job, and so I was hired as a part-time teacher, assistant varsity football coach, and assistant track coach at Jeff. So that was there, and it was a part-time position for a year. And when that year was up, Bob Watt, who I mentioned was my PE teacher, was the principal at Oceana. He said, "I got a job for you." And I said, "What is it?" He says, "You can teach algebra and geometry." I said, "What?" "I can teach algebra." He said, "Don't worry. We'll get you squared away. We'll do all that." So I was hired as an assistant football coach, head wrestling coach, head track coach, and algebra and geometry teacher.
Wow.
At 23 years old.
At Oceana.
At Oceana.
That is amazing. So
it is amazing.
I never met a high school football coach that didn't teach anything except history and I forget what else.
Right.
Okay? That is, so you actually taught algebra and geometry.
Yeah, I did. I was one step ahead of the kids.
You had to be.
And I gave every assignment was on the odd pages because the answers were in the back of the book.
How long were you at Oceana?
It was great. It was I was at Oceana. I was assistant coach, and then I was the head coach in 72 and 73. Ellen had just had our second child, and I said, you know what, I can't do the head coach stuff anymore. Bill Gray, a legend coach, was my assistant. I said, Bill, you be the head coach, I'll be your assistant.
Yeah.
So I was an assistant for 8 years until I left Oceana. But at Oceana, I coached girls basketball, soccer, track, and wrestling.
Man.
And you had to, when you were a PE teacher, or you had to coach 3 sports.
Right.
You know, they didn't say, I just want, and that, just a side note, that was the end of kids playing multiple sports.
Yeah.
Because once a teacher who only coached basketball or baseball or football, they wanted to hog those kids all year round. So they would discourage them from being on the football team or on the baseball team. Concentrate on track, concentrate on baseball, concentrate on soccer, whatever.
Did you continue to teach algebra and geometry?
No.
No.
I went back to my level of basic math and general math.
Okay.
And so, and then they gave me some PE classes.
Right.
Especially when I became the head coach, they gave me some PE classes.
How long was your tenure at Oceana?
I was at Oceana for 11 years. And then I went back to Jeff. And I was at Jeff for 3 years.
Teaching and coaching?
Teaching and coaching football, coaching soccer, and coaching baseball.
What were you teaching?
I was teaching driver ed,
okay,
career ed, and PE.
Okay, great.
And so, and then when I left there and went to Burlingame.
So you had full plate and full days. I mean, those are long
days,
yeah. Huh? Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about Burlingame for a minute, but I'm going to break away just for a second. I want to know, how long have you and Ellen lived in Burlingame?
We've been in Burlingame since 1976.
76.
Yeah.
Did you come down here when you got the job at Burlingame High or prior?
No, I got the job about 7 years after we moved down here. Because what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to teach at a school where my kids went. I had a really good relationship with Larry Teixeira, and he always wanted me to come down to Burlingame. I said, when my son graduates, you know, and when my daughter graduates, then we'll think about it. So what happened was John Gilmore, who was a guy that I coached with at Oceana, was coaching at Mitty. He got the head job at Burlingame, and he asked me to come along.
Had your kids graduated by then?
No, so
okay.
They were still in school. So,
yeah.
But the thing was, I was teaching at Jeff and coaching at Burlingame still.
Yeah.
And so my daughter, who I coached in bobby socks and soccer, and Stephen, who I coached with John Tyler in AYSO and Little League baseball. So we lived in Burlingame since in 76. So how we got here was completely my wife's. We lived in South City.
Right, yeah.
And at 4 o'clock, the fog came in every night. Mm-hmm. And she said, we're not living it. So my wife took those 2 little kids, and a friend of mine was a real estate agent for, at the time, Gilmartin Realty. So he would take her around to different houses with the little kids in tow. And so we saw a house. She saw a house. I didn't see any houses. She said, I like this house on Farrington. I like it. We made an offer. They didn't take it. So we're looking around. So then she calls me up. We said, there's a house on Berry Lane that I like. It's small. It's got smaller, but it's got 3 bedrooms, but it's smaller. But we'll only live here for like a couple years. Okay. And I said, oh, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. So we moved in there. And it was the first morning where I saw squirrels and sunlight and trees. And I went, this is amazing.
After all those years in Daly City,
South City, it was. Yeah. I never saw that stuff.
Right.
And so it was a good place because my daughter was starting kindergarten. So they were supposed to, and we lived right maybe 2 blocks from Pershing. My daughter was supposed to go to kindergarten at Pershing, but they closed it.
Yep.
And so our kids had to go to
McKinley.
Yeah. So they went to McKinley. So they, and now I think the kids that live in their area go to Washington now.
Right.
But it was great. Great families, great teachers, just a fantastic community.
At this point, though, you were just coaching at Burlingame and still...
Teaching at Jeff.
Yes. And then the transition came when?
Came in about 91 when my son was graduating.
Yeah.
But I still coached him in football, and that was the worst experience of his life.
I bet.
Because every time some kid did something wrong, I yelled at him. But he was a hell of a football player, really good. I think I ruined his passion for football by how I handled him. But we had really good teams. He was a really good football player, surrounded by really good football players. You know, T.C. Wolfgram, Sean Florio, Brian Evers, just to name a few kids that played, Robbie Molina. Just a bunch of kids.
This was
neighborhood kids.
This was 89, 90, 91?
90, 91, yeah.
Gosh.
And then when we won the little big game, that's what I wanted. And one year in 89, we won the championship, a 3-way championship with San Mateo, Carlmont, and Burlingame. But only 2 teams would go to the playoff in those days. But there's 3 champions.
Yeah, so they had to
So we played San Mateo. We beat them in a little big game down there. John Gilmore, coach from Carlmont, and the coach from Aragon get into the wrestling room. The commissioner flips a coin, and the odd man was out, and that was John Gilmore.
Oh, wow.
So we didn't go to the playoffs.
Wow.
But we won the championship in 89. We got the paw back.
Yeah.
And at that time, I think we were maybe 5 or 10 wins behind San Mateo.
Yeah.
And I think now Burlingame's like 30 wins ahead of San Mateo.
Oh, I think they went on a 13-game winning streak until
so
this particular
it's crazy.
year. When you were there, was the game still on Thanksgiving Day or had moved away?
No, it was on a Saturday.
Yeah, it was.
Because I think remember the leagues merged.
Yeah.
And once the leagues merged,
everything changed
because they had playoffs. You couldn't have that Thanksgiving Day game.
Okay, so now you're at Burlingame High. Finally, the kids are out of high school, et cetera. What were some of the classes you taught at Burlingame?
I taught history, taught PE, taught health ed, taught driver ed. I was a dean for a couple of years.
No kidding. So you took Vic. Took Mangini's
I wasn't Vic Mangini, who I got to know very well.
Right.
But I was the dean for a couple of years, and it was an experience. Yeah. And then I left being a dean and went back to being a teacher because.
Yeah. Who was your principal at that time?
The times that I was there were Larry Teixeira.
Yeah, great guy.
Jerry Aragoni.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then my last was Matt Bigger.
Okay. We'll get to some of those guys in a little bit. Okay. Yeah, and maybe we won't. Okay, so, all right. Why did you stop being a head coach? I mean, you have all this wonderful experience, but it seems like you were happier being an assistant than a head coach.
I was, because here's what happened. I mean, it worked out well. John Gilmore was a head coach. Then he became the athletic director in 97. He said, I can't do both, but I can be the assistant. Why don't you be the head coach? So I became the head coach.
Right.
And at that time, we installed a new offense. And we had this running back named Onan Reyes, who wound up getting 2,800 yards that year.
I remember the name.
Okay, Onan, it's a record that'll never be broken at Burlingame. And then I was a head coach that year. And then in 98, I was a head coach. The first year we won the league. We won the PAL Bay. That was the first year of the PAL Bay. Mm-hmm. We won it. We went undefeated in the league. And then we won our first playoff game against Willow Glen in overtime.
Okay.
Lost to Los Gatos 16-13. Then the next year we were 4-6 and we lost 5 games by 3 points or less.
Wow.
Jeez. And there were bonehead calls by me because if it was 4th and 5, I'd go for it, even if it was on our own.
You just went for it.
I just went for it, and sometimes it hurt us. And I'll tell you, we played Woodside, who wound up winning the league that year. We lose 14-13 to them. On the bus ride to the game, Tony Granado shoulder goes out.
Oh, how does that happen?
I don't know. And he's our starting quarterback.
Yeah, my gosh.
So we're going there. So we're playing with a guy who never played quarterback against a really good team. And we're going, and we score with about a minute to go. And now it's 14-13. I said, we're going for 2. And we don't make it, we lose. We're playing MA. We're ahead by 2. They kick a field goal in the last minute. We lose by 1. We're playing Aragon. We're winning by 3. They score. We lose by 2. I mean, that was it. But then we beat San Mateo.
Wow.
we beat San Mateo, a little big game, put 40 on them, and everybody was happy.
Right. You win that little big game.
That's
you're the
right.
man. Okay, but then you step away from head coaching?
Well, then what happened was John gave up being athletic director, so he said, why don't you be the athletic director? So I was the athletic director. So I said, John, you're the head football coach then. So we were. And then then the next year, that year, after 98, I said, John, I'll coach the Frost soft kids. Okay, so, I won't get in your way and you won't get in my way.
Yeah.
So I coached Frost soft kids, and we won the championship. And we had a good team. The next year, we had a good team, and we lost the championship, and we were second place.
Yeah.
But we had good kids. I had, who did I have on that team? I had a bunch of kids that I knew, like Brad Smith.
Smith, yeah.
Drew Schiller's older brother, Brian.
Yeah.
I had Kenny Bowden. I had a bunch of kids that were good players.
And you know what? We're just talking neighborhood kids.
Yeah, they were all neighborhood kids.
Neighborhood kids.
And so we had a good season. And so then I went back up into the varsity.
Yeah.
And we coached, I guess, 2001 or somewhere around that time. John decided to leave. I said, I'm going to leave. And so that year, I think it was John Philippopoulos' first year, I sat out coaching.
But continued to teach.
At Burlingame.
At
Burlingame, still, But I was teaching, and then I still coach. I coached girls basketball every year that I was there.
Right.
I coached frost soft baseball when I was there.
Yeah. Boy.
And so I didn't coach anything in the fall of that year because we had the 9/11 the year before. Mm-hmm. And then we went to the playoffs. We lost by a point in the playoffs to Pacific Grove. The next year, John Philippopoulos was head coach. I just was in the booth for him, just, helping him, whatever he needed. And then Matt Bigger and I had a disagreement.
What year was that?
3 or 4.
Okay.
And we had a disagreement, and obviously I thought I was more powerful than him, and he proved he was more powerful than me.
Well, that was going to be my next question was, you have the wonderful opportunity of living in Burlingame and working in Burlingame.
Oh, yeah. I'll tell you what, it was the best experience career-wise of my life. It was fun. It was like when I went to Burlingame, it was like being in Disneyland.
It had to be.
It was kids were smiling and happy, and and they had this tradition of after finals they all threw their papers into the hallways, and I went, "What is this?"
Yeah.
And so it was, and Larry Teixeira was so magnificent. He made it so much fun to work there.
Right.
And the great staff, they were just fantastic people. And it was the best experience teaching-wise that I had been. And Aragon was second.
Okay, so for some reason, you bumped heads with Matt Bigger.
Right.
And you said, I got to go.
No, he said, you got to go.
Okay. So when that happens, what did happen? I mean.
Well, I got an involuntary transfer.
Okay. Involuntary.
Right. Uh-huh. And then... a long story short, I grieved it and won my grievance. And by that time, I had left Burlingame on the first day of school. They transferred me to Hillsdale.
My gosh. Wow.
So they transferred me to Hillsdale.
So you have to show up to the first day of school at Hillsdale?
At Hillsdale.
Yeah.
But I have all my materials at Burlingame and everything else. So they say, you got a day off, you can get all your stuff. I went, so anyway, I was reluctant to be at Hillsdale, and therefore I called it Hills Jail. Uh-huh. Okay.
Hills Jail. Oh my God, this is great.
And the teachers there weren't very happy with that term, but I felt, and so they were redoing the gym. So the PE office was in the old equipment room.
Yeah.
That had dead rats and just crap all over it was horrible. And so I was there, but I said, Steve Sell called me up and said, Ed, you want to coach football at Aragon? I said, well, I'm at Hillsdale. He said, no, after school, you come and coach at Aragon. And so I did. And I coached at Aragon, and Leidig, who was a principal, every day that was a game, I'd fill out a paper for a leave, a 6-period leave.
Yeah.
And he
So
said,
you
well,
get to the
you
game.
can't go. I said, why? And the other teacher, well, you're a special case. I go, I'm going. He said, well, we're going to dock you. I said, fine.
Wow.
So anyway, I'm coaching at Aragon, but teaching at Hillsdale. So the grievance I have with the district comes before a board, who says that. And the board and their assistant superintendent, female, went and presented their case. I had a union rep who presented my case.
Were you there?
I was there.
Yeah.
And so the person, the judge or whoever it was, referee, told the district, you have to settle this because you're not going to like my outcome. So then I get on with my union rep, we get on the BART because it was in Oakland, we go back. And he said, Ed, what do you want? I said, well, let's find out. And so anyway, I get a call from Sam Johnson, who's the superintendent.
Okay.
He's a good guy, And he said, Ed, what's it take for you to not follow through in your, grievance? I said, some money and a transfer to any school I want. And he said, okay, you can go to any school you want but Burlingame as long as Matt Bigger's there.
Right.
So anyway, I go
you
to...
probably didn't want anything to do with that anyway, right?
So I was at Aragon, and I had a bunch of people that I knew there.
Yeah.
It was great staff.
Plus
Kirk
coaching
Platt
there.
was a principal, a good guy, and coaching football, and I was going to coach girls basketball there too as well. So I got to teach. I taught health and PE there.
Okay.
Great staff, great place to be. Adult teachers, really professional,
Yeah.
a great reputation.
And still relatively close to home.
Right, and just a fantastic group of kids, really diverse from all various backgrounds, from Hillsborough to Shoreview to Foster City. It was a great experience there. So I really enjoyed my time there, and so I coached. I was always the assistant football coach.
Was John Gilmore coaching up there at that time?
Yeah, because I always followed John.
Yeah.
Because John had his fallout with Aragoni. And so he was at Aragon, and he's the one that said, you got to come here and coach. And then that's where it led to Sel asking me, to coach football. And then I taught there, and then I became the PE department chair there and co-chair with Nettie Gennaro, who's Mr. Gennaro, who was the superintendent's daughter. She's a great woman too.
What a close-knit group of
It was,
folks.
Hey, it's pretty close, man.
It really is.
So I was there at Aragon from 2004 to 2012. So 8 years, 8 really good years of just really great group.
2012 is when you retired officially from teaching. Is that
correct?
Okay, that was at Aragon.
That was at Aragon.
But you continued to coach, or
what I did was I continued to coach track at Aragon. I had been a track coach at Oceana and at Jeff, so I coached track. I coached the relays and sprints with Bill Dascarolis.
But no more football.
No more football at Aragon.
Right.
And so I got the job at Sacred Heart Prep. John Gilmore was already there. I was with Sacred Heart Prep, coaching the Frost Soft the first year. We went undefeated. And then Pete Lavarado, the head coach, asked me to come up to the varsity, and that's where I've been since.
So wait a minute. You're at Aragon, coaching track.
Right.
No more teaching.
No more teaching.
What happens? One day the phone rings and it's Gilmore, and he says, "How would you like to come down?"
We had talked because John had previously, when he was at Aragon, had been at Sacred Heart Prep for a year, and then when he went down there, he asked me to come, just like he did when he got the job at Burlingame.
And you said absolutely.
I said, "Hey, looking forward to it."
Okay. All right. So now you've been coaching, you've been at Sacred Heart Prep in Atherton for 12 years, correct? All right. Tell me what a difference is coaching and or teaching at a public school versus a private school.
Well, you don't get as much talent because you have 300 boys at a private school.
You don't get much talent at a public school.
At a private school.
Oh, you don't?
You get talented kids, but you don't get 50 kids coming out for football.
At private school?
At private school. At a small private school, 300 boys.
Yeah.
Where they have water polo success, so that takes some of your bigger kids.
Yep.
And so the difference is, besides the $58,000 tuition, is
how much?
58. The difference is we get it's similar to Burlingame, very coachable kids, very supportive parents, very supportive administration, and they give you everything you can want except 250-pound football players.
Right.
We're smaller than most. This year and the past year, we've got some big kids.
Yeah.
In fact, last year we have 5 kids in D1 right now from last year's team.
Jeez, that's great.
Which was
that's pretty darn good.
And then of course we had one kid, Ben Burkervin, who was Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year at Washington.
No kidding.
And played for the Seahawks for 4 years.
Jeez, that's terrific.
And so we get good kids. We're in the playoffs all the time. We won the Bay Division last year.
Yeah.
We took 3rd in the Big Bay Division this year with Los Gatos and Wilcox and all the schools.
Yeah.
Our kids play really well. The only problem is we don't have depth.
Yeah.
How
many kids are on a football team?
Well, probably you might have 40, but about 25 of them are wide receivers. Okay?
Right.
So,
yeah,
you don't get those big kids.
Does everybody play?
Sometimes you don't put kids in because it's like
for health
anything.
Reasons.
Well,
you don't want them to get flattened.
There's safety reasons, but also you're competitive. You're playing for a championship. There's not AYSO.
If you're at a public school, are you required to play everybody?
No.
Same thing.
Same thing. It's like
okay.
The difference is now though is at Sacred Heart Prep, which is different than I would put Menlo in the same category as Sacred Heart Prep in the fact that there's no easy classes for kids to take. There's no general ed courses.
Right.
And our kids don't go to CSM when they leave
right.
this school.
That's what you're paying your $58,000 for.
You're paying that money. And so, other schools that, and I won't name them, but other Catholic schools, they can recruit kids and get them in and have them have a softer schedule than they would if they came to our place.
Okay.
There's no easy, you're not going to take an easy class. Plus, we can't recruit a kid and say, would you like to come and play for us? Write a check for $58,000 and you can play for us.
Yeah.
They're not coming there to play football. They're coming there to get an education.
Absolutely.
But they do play really good football. Yeah. And, I think we're probably the most successful private school, except for Sarah, in San Mateo County.
Yeah.
And county public schools as well.
So, Ed, what about the parent that says, Coach Larios, I don't have to remind you that I'm paying $58,000 a year here for my son to go to high school. How come you don't play him? You ever get the pressure?
I don't. The head coach does.
Does he? Does he get the pressure?
I'm sure, yeah. That's everywhere.
Yeah.
Either everyone's parent. You got to advocate for your kid. But right. There's a way to do it.
Yeah.
You go up, and I would recommend, my son Billy's not playing. What can he do to improve his chances? Okay? Now, you can tell him, he's got to work harder, or he's got to do this, or he's got to do that. But coaches get on the defensive when all of a sudden you come up to a coach and say, how come Billy's not playing? Mm-hmm. Do you want the truth or do you want a political answer?
He's not that good. Right. No, correct.
But you want to be respectful to the parent because that's their kid.
Yeah.
And so you want them to respect you too.
Yeah.
You don't work for them. You work for the kid. Mm-hmm. And so you want them to approach it as, how can I make this situation better for my kid?
Okay.
And in public school and private school, it's the same way in the classroom. Mm-hmm. My kid's getting a D. What did you do to get my kid to get a D? I didn't do anything. I just gave him the grade.
Okay.
So it's just, parents have a right to question, but they have to do it in a respectful way that makes you want to return the answer in a respectful way.
Okay, so let's spin off that now.
Okay.
You have been teaching for, I'm just going to say, over 40 years, maybe longer than that. How has the teaching profession changed over those years?
There's less teaching and more feel-good things.
What do you mean by that?
Don't make Johnny upset. Try to don't hurt his feelings by giving him an F or giving him a lower grade, or it's more less responsibility on the kid and more responsibility on the teacher.
Yeah. And that was been a slow evolving type of thing?
I mean, I remember if I called a parent when I first started teaching, or when I was in if the school called my parent would say, well, I'll take care of it. Okay, now the parents, some of them, they're after you.
Saying you take care of it.
You do. What are you doing wrong?
Right.
Let my kid make up this test. But you know what? I'm trying to be fair, but I'm also trying to teach them consequences of decisions. Mm-hmm. If you decide that you don't want to take a test on the day that I say the makeup test is, that's not on me. That's on you.
Yeah.
But you got to make arrangements for him. He can't do this or they can't do that.
Yeah.
And it's getting to the point where teachers are getting more and more demands by parents to do things that really it's not the teacher's job to do.
So are you saying it's harder today than it was years ago?
Yeah, and one of the things technology has really hurt is that kids' grades get posted every day. So the parent can look at a kid's grade right now
and see what's going
on. As before, it was 9 weeks they get the report card.
Right.
And they say, okay, well, now it could be every day, but a good thing about it is everything's there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if
no
the grade,
surprises.
right,
no surprises.
Everything's there.
Yeah.
But then they'll say, why is that there?
Yeah.
So teachers are in a bind because now there's more expectations to do things that involve not just teaching.
Yeah.
But other, and not that they're not important, but it detracts from the teacher's ability to teach in a way that makes the teacher excited to teach.
Yeah. Okay. I'm a young player that plays at Sacred Heart. I play for Coach Larios, right? Now it's my senior year. And I come up to you and I say, Coach, after college, I'm not sure what I'd like to do. I think maybe I'd like to follow in your footsteps. I'd like to be a teacher and a coach. What kind of advice would you give that person?
I don't think anybody at Sacred Heart Prep is going to ask me that question.
Okay.
They might ask me, what can I do to own a team or start a business? Or,
Okay, let's pick another high school, but let's go with that.
You know what? What I do is I try to just be an example for them. And if they want to, most of the kids don't look at teaching and coaching the way we did.
Uh-huh.
They don't play on playgrounds anymore. They don't have block games. They don't, it's different. So I think the farthest thing, some of them, once they are athletes and they go to college and they look at what they can do, then they'll come back and say, I'd like to get into teaching.
Yeah. But
I've never had many kids that said, I want to be a teacher while they're in high school.
Right. So it's beyond, and I get
that.
Right, But if somebody came back to you after college, would you give them some sort of advice, mentoring?
Vow of poverty would be the first thing. Okay.
Yeah, vow of poverty.
Move out of the Bay Area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Go to Texas or Arkansas where you can afford to buy a house.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to make a living in this area here on a teacher salary. Right. The top of the teacher scale right now is probably about $160,000. Mm-hmm. That's after 20 years of teaching.
It's a long time.
If you make $160,000, you can't buy a house here.
No, even at that salary.
You can't even buy a house in Tracy anymore.
Right.
So the thing is, what careers can you have that allow you to stay where you are? Mm-hmm. Trades,
Yep.
Plumber, contractor, electrician, all of those trade skills, you can make a living here and do well.
Yep.
But if a kid asks me what, I would just really say that you really have to think long term about how your future will be.
Yeah.
And can you afford, if you want a family, where you want to live. I think teaching is something that comes from inside of you. It's not something that I'd like to be a teacher.
Yeah.
It's not like I'd like to be a fireman.
Yeah.
Being a teacher is something that you probably have skills to do when maybe you were a babysitter, or maybe you were on the playground organized your own teams or whatever. But it's a great career. I mean, it's been great for me.
Yeah.
But I started over 40 years ago.
Yep.
When you could buy a house for $40,000 in Burlingame.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that a little bit. Because not only were you a coach and a teacher here in Burlingame and throughout the peninsula, you served on our Burlingame Recreation and Parks Commission for
Correct.
many years, about 12 years, give or take?
I think 10, maybe 10.
And you were chairman, I don't know, 3 or 4 times.
Yeah.
Talk about some of the things that went on while you were the
Well, the thing that
chairman.
was the most frustrating was we wanted to get a teen center because there was nothing for kids here to do. And
Right.
and Burlingame got the north and the south. Mm-hmm. So Randy Schwartz,
Yep. Who was the park director?
We had a commission, and we had parents from, people from by the park, people up north, people on the west side, to come out. And so what happened was, we had kids come out and talk about why they needed teen center, and these adults would browbeat them, and we don't want kids in our park. We're too close.
Was that teen center going to be at the rec center?
It was going to be at the rec center. Then we were going to purchase the candy store.
Oh.
And have it be in there.
Yeah.
Then we were going to build it where the triangle is, for the bocce ball court and stuff.
Yeah.
That was another site that was there.
Yeah.
But then we would have to have underground parking, and people would say, underground parking's unsafe, on this, on that. So all of this deflection of opposition, especially by the people who live by the park, we don't want all this traffic and all this. So it was to the point where it was just a battle.
Yeah.
But it was to the point where we were going to get a multi-use rec center. Mm-hmm. But then it went away. The interest went away. And the old building at the rec center was not earthquake-proof. So it had to come down sometime.
Right.
So that was the most logical place to build one.
Oh, I would think so.
But nobody wanted it there because of the fact that it would be this, do that, do this, do that. And lo and behold, where is the new rec center? Right in the middle of where it was before, where people were screaming and crying.
Yeah.
But all those screaming and criers are either dead or moved away.
Yeah. But it's a fabulous facility.
It is. And I give them credit for doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. With underground parking,
but it took forever.
Yeah, it sure did.
But look at all the things that they said you couldn't do.
Yeah.
They did. The underground parking, big building.
Made it happen.
And so a credit to them.
Yeah.
But boy, was it a slog to go through the people that were just adamant against it.
Yeah. And what about the things over at Murray Field where the soccer is?
Remember that used to be the dump site.
Yeah.
And so when they were starting to develop the facility, they did the golf driving range and the soccer field.
Yep.
And so the city ran the driving range and handled the soccer field. Well, then the city wanted to contract the driving range out. They didn't want to do it. They didn't want to do it anymore.
Right.
So they had a private company come in and they ran it. Okay. Then the soccer field was closed half the time because it would rain and then the field would be muddy and nobody could play on it. Mm-hmm. After that, they developed the baseball fields at Bayside. The little baseball stadium, because they had the big one at Bayside, but then they had the little one, and next to it was a dog park that we had. And I have a video because I also did a TV show for Wasik Denui, who was the Pacific
cable station here in Burlingame.
Okay, so I had a show called All About Sports.
Yeah. So
opening day of that new facility, I interviewed Hank Sauer Sr.
Boy, what year was that?
That had to be late 90s.
Yeah, gosh.
So I had the interview with Hank Sauer Sr., the ex-Major League Baseball player, most valuable player.
Played for the Giants,
Played for the Giants, was the MVP for the Chicago Cubs in '56.
Yep.
And all these, I interviewed these little kids who now must be in their 30s.
Yeah.
And I have the videotape of all those kids when I interviewed them, and Hank Sauer Jr. and some of the kids that were in it, and I had an interview with Ed Arnold.
He was, I think, one of the first recreation director we
Ed
had here
Arnold
in Burlingame.
was one of the first people to go to Burlingame High School.
No kidding.
Okay, and he went there when it was called Burlingame North. I mean, San Mateo North.
Right.
Okay, so Ed Arnold was a baseball guy. And he played in these leagues that all these cities had throughout the peninsula. And he talked about where he played baseball on the corner of Peninsula and El Camino. There was a ball field there.
Wow.
Where apartments by Safeway on Peninsula, there was a ball field there. He talked about when Washington Park first opened. He talked about where he played baseball, what teams played, where he went. And then he talked about when he went to the Fox Theater and got Babe Ruth's autograph on a baseball.
Wait a minute. Babe Ruth was here in Burlingame?
Uh-huh.
That's crazy.
So Ed had
did he tell you the year that happened? I mean, when was that?
It's on the video.
20s or 30s or
Yeah,
something?
like that, yeah.
He was here in Burlingame?
Yep.
Why?
I guess they had these little circuits where after they would go around, get extra money, and so he had the Babe Ruth baseball.
That's one for the Historical Society.
You know, because I'll give him the videotape because it's
the day that Babe Ruth visited Burlingame.
It was, it was amazing that Ed Arnold had just tons of information about baseball in Burlingame.
So did you enjoy serving on the commission? You must have.
I did. I had some good friends on the commission.
Yeah.
It was nice. We got some things done.
Yeah.
We got the swimming pool.
Yep.
And the all-weather football field at Burlingame.
Yeah.
We got a donation of $1 million for the swimming pool.
My goodness.
From a family.
$1 million donation for the pool.
And so we had that pool built, and it's funny, great lighted facility, right?
Yeah.
The people that live across that practice field were upset because the lights from the pool shine.
Coming into the hall.
So they never shine the lights that are on the west side of the pool. Only the ones that are on the east side.
No kidding.
So it was that, and so it was, we got a lot done. We got the little school at Village Park going. We got a merger with the Millbrae Rec Department. And Randy was in charge of both.
That's great.
So
yeah, some great stuff.
Yeah, so it was a lot of serving the community, working with the people that I worked with.
Yeah,
it was kind of nice.
So, as we wrap it up, in your 40 plus years of living here in Burlingame, there's been a lot of changes.
Yeah.
Are you good with the changes?
I mean, change always happens.
Right.
I remember when they wanted to change Safeway.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I never thought it would look like it looks right now.
Uh-huh.
I thought it would be more homey and, and I mean, you look at like where the post office was, okay, and then you look where the dairy sign was on the on the all those things are gone, and I just remember going when I was a kid playing Burlingame and going to the donut shop. It wasn't a donut shop. That was a hamburger.
It was Flings.
Yeah.
And Hasty Tasty.
Yeah,
before
and
that.
go there and go, or go up to Primrose and go to the bowling alley and go bowling. Those were all things. And Arthur's Toy Town.
Yep.
All the small town. If you walked down Burlingame Avenue on a Sunday, nothing was open.
Right.
You walk down, you got Levy Brothers not open. You got that Bon Appetit Market right there. It's different in the fact that there's no long-standing families left.
Yeah.
You, Ray, you could walk down Burlingame 30 years ago and you know everybody on it. Now you walk down Burlingame Avenue and you don't know a soul.
Right.
And that's good for,
it happens. It's change.
And I remember when I was
when
I was coaching at Oceana, we used to go to the frog pond.
Here in Burlingame? Oh my gosh, over by the Hyatt. That's funny.
We used to go there. And then what about the place that was where it was La Piñata? What was La Piñata before that little?
It was the Kit Kat Club.
Yeah.
Right. So, folks, we have it. Coach Larios is admitting to us that he would go to the frog pond. Okay?
I walked by the frog pond. I never went into the frog pond.
Well,
but I'm just talking about...
Disclaimer.
I'm talking about places that were there.
Yes.
The hardware store on
Yes.
on Burlingame Avenue.
Yeah.
David's Deli, Simpson's Clothing.
There was Danello's Deli,
Yeah.
Simpson, Smith and Heller. Yeah, they're all gone.
And then, the theater on Fox.
Yep, absolutely.
You know.
That's funny. Okay. All right. So, Ed, you mentioned Ellen. You've been married over 40 years now?
We've been married 50. I got to get this right.
Yeah.
We got married in 54 years.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And she's been, I'll tell you, what woman would allow a man to be away from home during football season when it's the best traveling time to go around the country?
Right.
And I remember she said, I'd like to travel. I said, I am traveling. I'm traveling from here to Sacred Heart Prep every day.
South City to Burlingame to San Mateo to Hillsdale. And so traveling.
But, and our kids are great. Stephen was a good football player at Burlingame. My daughter Kristen was a really good soccer and a softball player. Got a great education there.
Yeah.
It was a neighborhood school, and it was fun to go to.
Are the children still in the neighborhood,
my
still close by?
son, him and his family live in San Carlos.
Great.
And he married a girl from Aragon.
Oh, okay. That's all right.
And then my daughter and her family live in Sonoma, and she married a guy from Burlingame.
You're kidding.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah.
My daughter has 2 girls. My son, Stephen, has 4 kids. The oldest is 21, and the youngest is 7.
Terrific. Wow, what a spread. So you have 6 grandchildren?
So I have 6 grandchildren.
Boy.
So it's kind of nice to have them and then have them leave.
Yeah, of course. But it's still great to have them
Oh,
around,
yeah, no,
right?
they're around. I mean, Sonoma, we go up there. We probably go to
close.
Sonoma and see my daughter more than we go to San Carlos.
Is that right? Yeah.
Because what does it say? If you marry a woman, you lose a son. If you marry a girl, you gain a daughter.
I got it. Good. Great.
So it's living in Burlingame. Obviously, we didn't move after 2 years.
No.
It didn't happen. But
why would you, right?
We're happy.
Yeah.
We were happy where we are.
Yeah.
Great neighbors, great neighborhood.
Yeah.
We're coaching with John and Ray would come to every game and not say a word.
Yeah.
Just watch him and his wife come, and they, I had just great experiences with parents and kids here.
And Coach Larios is a fixture, often seen walking his dog up Burial Lane and around the neighborhoods over there. So.
And I pick up every time.
Good man, Ed. Good man. So before I close this out, Coach Larios, I want you to know that you now have the distinguished of having the longest running podcast on Burlingame. It's a small town. You have now edged out another coach, Doc Shepler. We had Doc here last month or the month before. He was over an hour. Usually the politicians take up all the time, but you're the number one man now.
40 years.
You've got a lot to talk about.
Put in the capsule of
That's right. Ed Larios,
we
Coach.
should have turned the microphone off.
Coach, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. And Ray, thank you. Say hello to your wife.
It's been a pleasure.
I'd like to thank Coach Ed Larios for being a guest today on Burlingame. It's a small town podcast sponsored by the Burlingame Historical Society. Thanks to Kathy and Shelby for editing and producing, the great Ray Tyler for video, original music by Bray, and you can hear more of Bray at braymusic.com. This podcast was recorded on Tuesday, November 21st at the Burlingame Public Library. The Burlingame Historical Society copyrights this recording, and no part can be copied or replayed without the permission of the Burlingame Historical Society. So until next time, everyone, see you around Burlingame. It's a small town.